Just imagine putting your child to bed at night and knowing that despite everything in your power, your child is not safe. I'm Polly Perrette. Join me in this large-scale investigation that pits sophisticated science and community empowerment against a devastating killer. Life on the African continent, its exquisite beauty, the symmetry of new beginnings, and primal passings. This is Africa's rhythm, its texture, and across the land, its formidable realities.
We don't all fall sick on the same day, but today is this person, tomorrow is another one.
Over 3 billion people are at risk of catching malaria each year. In Africa, the bite of a mosquito kills someone every minute of every day. This is an extraordinary effort to catch a killer in the dark. Each evening as the sun sets, a killer emerges, or rather a swarm of killers, mosquitoes. Their bites will infect most of these villagers with malaria numerous times in their lives, and far too many will not survive an attack. When the moon feigns a wink over the village of Tikanko, just outside the city of Bo, Sierra Leone, it signals the end of the day's searing heat and the start of the night's comfortable camaraderie.
My name is Paramount Chief Joe Kangbai Makabure.
First, the main news in detail.
In this rural community, Chief Makavore's radio is a prized possession. It's a connection to the outside world. But despite their interest in what's happening elsewhere, most of these villagers only recently learned that mosquitoes cause malaria, even though it results in one of the main reasons people are dying in this developing nation.
When people became feverish and died, none of us knew why. It was some disease about which we knew nothing.
Fact is, in sub-Saharan Africa, malaria is a major killer of children under the age of 5. At the close of 2010, faith-based groups spearheaded an educational campaign that has begun to take hold in this region. No longer was malaria attributed to a variety of mysterious causes. Mosquitoes were identified as the culprit and became an adversary to be defeated.
The mosquitoes are as old as we are, and they were everywhere. When they bite us, they bite the father, the mother, the children. We don't have medication for them. Then you die. So that is why we call it the killer's disease.
But tonight, Hawa Berry has a defense against the mosquito, a long-lasting insecticide-treated bed net. The children settle in for the night, as do the chickens. And Hawa breathes a little easier knowing that her babies are less likely to contract malaria. This bedtime routine is new to the family and to most everyone else in the village. It took an unprecedented effort to make the nets available to everyone. This is a day of celebration because mosquito nets will soon hang in the homes of over 500,000 people in the Bo district. The campaign is the first of its kind, not because bed nets are being distributed, but because of the tremendous grassroots effort that has gone into making this happen. This community is achieving for itself what outside organizations could not. When the people have ownership, they are destined to succeed.
Malaria, kills. So we have told them that is the difference. We want to prevent. Prevention is better than cure.
The difference is the 3,700 local volunteers trained to go house to house, to educate, assist, and later return to see how the nets are being used. It's a far cry from simply handing out nets, which are sometimes resold, misused, or not used at all.
We went from village to village and talked to them the importance of the bed nets.
The nets, coupled with education and access to treatment, are beginning to show results. Compared to the larger charities addressing malaria on a global level, this is a relatively modest group of faith-based advocates. But they are sparking a revolution. One of the contributing factors is the influence of faith leaders who persuaded their followers to participate.
Before you go into their houses, most of them have started hanging up their bed nets.
The United Methodist Church's Imagine No Malaria initiative partnered with like-minded organizations, the government of Sierra Leone, and churches and mosques. When asked why they were using the nets, many said because their pastors or imam told them to. Nearly 400,000 nets were distributed in Bo and over 3 million nationwide. The program, coupled with a maternal and child health initiative, resulted in more young children sleeping under a bed net than in the country's history. The effort still serves as a model of what can be done when the church gets involved.
God is so good.
Later on in the program, what it takes to cloak a community in bed nets.
He's so good to us.
That really says all that we want to say to you.
In the 19th century, malaria earned West Africa the nickname the white man's grave. In reality, the disease has always been colorblind. Across the entire continent, burial grounds are populated with its victims, leaving behind shattered families and broken hearts. The most vulnerable are pregnant women and children, but no one is safe from the mosquito's kiss of death. That's why volunteers like Lapia Amara are making house calls.
They made the four corners.
The United Methodist Church organized and trained local Christian and Muslim health workers who were responsible for educating residents.
You put it this way, so the mosquito will not enter through the net.
And providing each household with enough nets to cover a family.
You do this one now. When I go to house, some people don't allow people just to enter into their bedrooms. I can talk to them not to be afraid because we are here to help. By that, they will allow you to enter into their bedrooms and you hang the net.
Because mosquitoes largely feed at night, bed nets are a practical defense against the insects. Lapia visits a mother who just gave birth to a baby girl this morning. Bantu Kumara has lost 2 children to what she calls warm body, high fever that is indicative of malaria. These nets will be aired out for a day, and then the family will have some protection. But even though a net may drape the bed, just feet away, mosquitoes breed in standing water.
I don't feel happy seeing this dirty water over here. This is a dirty water where the mosquito will bleed. You can see the egg in the water. If you don't have mosquito nets, you will get sick with malaria. You can see so many plastic over there. And I believe before I leave from here, I will talk to them so that they can just clean this place so that everything will be all right for them.
Taking the extra step is the foundation of the Imagine No Malaria approach.
We're understanding the reality that one net is just not enough for the family.
Shannon Trilly is part of the team that's stressing a community-based solution. She says it takes local and governmental support.
I think the assumption of the government is that the UMC comes in as a donor and we leave a lot of money and then we go home. So very quickly the conversation comes that we're a different kind of partner in which we're both a donor and an implementing partner.
The training of community health workers stresses accountability and the governance of funds and resources.
We're not just coming with a free item and leaving. The community is responsible for meeting us halfway.
This faith-based approach is intended to create greater communication and new procedures to achieve the common goal of better health.
I'm just going to wrap it and put one knot.
Gary Henderson heads the United Methodist Church's Global Health Initiative. He says that the only goal is to address diseases of poverty. It's that simple.
There is no hidden agenda with Imagine No Malaria. Imagine No Malaria is about saving lives. It is about addressing the diseases of poverty. Be they Christian, Muslim, traditional African religion, people have learned through experience that we can be trusted in that way.
It involves hundreds of thousands of bed nets, educational campaigns, but most of all, community empowerment.
Yes, we want the nets. And we are not going to sell them.
Faith-based organizations provide anywhere between 40 and 60% of the healthcare in Africa, depending on the country. Up next, see how they are on the front lines of the battle. In Ganta, Liberia, the United Methodist Church's community hospital weathered a vicious civil war. Today, it provides health care for not only Liberians, but patients traveling from the Republic of Guinea and the Ivory Coast.
They come from a far distance. They do walk to come to the hospital.
This mother injured her feet getting her child from Guinea to the hospital many miles from her home. Like most of the children here, 2-year-old Josiah has malaria. During recovery, his mother isn't selling the rice that makes a living for her family.
Right now, she's not selling, doing anything like business, so she may not be able to afford the medication.
The hospital has limited generator power and no running water.
No running water at all. This is what we do every day.
But patients aren't turned away because of lack of money.
One more. Okay.
And with young children and pregnant mothers being the most vulnerable to malaria, there's a great deal of need. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, churches provide half of all the medical care. And the church is often the center of the community. Where there are no roads, there is frequently a church or a mosque. This is Banganga, an impoverished urban district in Lubumbashi. In the entire city of 3 million, there are more cases of malaria here than in any other neighborhood. Throughout the nation, a bloody civil war left the infrastructure for clean water and sanitation nearly non-existent. The pools of sewage and rotting debris have become a paradise for mosquitoes. But an unprecedented effort is intended to send the petulant pest on the run. World Malaria Day 2010, Banganga, a fresh offensive against the mosquito. A coalition of faith leaders, Christian and Muslim, joined together in a historic launch of this malaria campaign.
These are the people who have made it possible for us to be here today, and we want to thank you very, very much. Please give them a big, big round of applause.
It was a homegrown effort to organize a public health team of door-to-door volunteers, most of whom are from the neighborhood.
I'm confident that the program can expand and continue in Congo and throughout Africa, especially if they leave it in the hands of the church and not give it to the government, because the government, they only start things once and they stop. But us, we're the community representing the people.
As a mother of 19 children, Kaya Bawili is among the first to receive nets.
It is a disease that worries everyone because it kills. At times, it can strike in the house, and you don't have money to get treatment, so you can lose a child in a small time. It is a dangerous disease.
We go into communities, we go into the households, we count the sleeping spaces, we count the people, we determine how many nets will be necessary. We go back to see if people are using those nets. If they're not using those nets, we want to know why.
Sometimes it's simple superstition that can affect use.
One of the myths around the nets is that they cause sterility, that men aren't as fertile, women aren't as fertile. It will cut down on babies. Another, not so much a myth, but a reality of the net, it's hotter sleeping under a bed net. It's not as comfortable. So it is important that people understand the value of the net so that everybody's safe in the community as they sleep at night.
1,000 nets are distributed, and along with this house-to-house approach, families are taught the importance of using them.
If a person doesn't use their bed net and therefore gets sick, they're going to pay a lot more money in getting to a hospital or getting treatment, or in worst case scenarios, losing a child or losing a pregnant woman, than the actual dollar value of the net. So now you're talking about comparing values of a $6 net and using it correctly and the value of a life that would be saved. But if you don't invest in making sure communities understand those decision points and those value points, then you're spending a lot of money on nets and transport, and by not spending money on getting the communities involved and understanding their world and that value of the net to them, then you lose everything.
But in many African communities, malaria is still a mystery. Why are people falling ill? Why are they dying?
We didn't know. I mean, mosquitoes were just kind of music all night. It's ancestors who come to visit us.
Bishop Nkulu Ntanda Ntambo says some believe when the rains come and the mangoes ripen, people fall ill. Others believe the unexplained illness is a result of witchcraft. He experienced this firsthand as a young child. When his family suffered malaria, they were considered cursed and became ostracized by their neighbors.
We used to move with my parents from one village to another. You can see the whole village running away. They leave because of death.
It's a cycle that promotes poverty and misunderstanding. Here in Kasumgambi, Congo, Mama Rose Nambing has lost her entire family to malaria.
My husband died from malaria. 7 children died from malaria, so I don't have anyone.
Rose's neighbors steer clear of her because they say there must be some reason she's suffered this fate, and they don't want any part of it.
I don't want anyone else to lose their life to malaria. It is painful when you lose someone from this disease.
As she utters this mournful message, children gather alongside a stew of swill that breeds sickness. Malaria, along with other preventable diseases of poverty, will likely kill 1 in 5 of these children. Bishop Ntambo spends much of his time educating his people about how to prevent malaria.
And this is the place where we have, it was kind of like mortuary. Children dying here every day.
He borrowed money for shovels and instructed workmen to hand dig over 25 miles of overgrown canals. Many didn't even know these ditches were here. They were dug for the Belgians, but when the colonial power left Congo over 60 years ago, malaria found a foothold as the canals choked with sand and vegetation. As the incidence of malaria declined, more shovels were put to use.
All these houses, when you go in, you will find mosquitoes nets. And now with a canal, including mosquitoes nets, many lives are being saved.
But it's only part of a larger movement among clergy.
will bow down and confess before his Lord.
Pastors and imams are taking this message to the pulpits. Mosquitoes mean malaria, and malaria must be treated by doctors. This is information that is making a difference. Considering that several African countries are emerging from civil war, and there is often perceived corruption at high levels, directives from the government are sometimes viewed with suspicion.
Hallelujah.
But when clergy address the causes and prevention of malaria, their word is truth. On another front, scientists are brewing hopeful solutions in laboratories around the globe. Stay tuned to see how. The beauty of Kenya is undeniable. Its abundant wildlife is a showcase of the continent's proud pedigree. Kenya is also considered the economic center of East Africa. But despite its many commanding qualities, the country is not immune to the scourge of malaria. Collectively, nearly 200 million working days are lost to the disease every year. But children suffer the most.
It's estimated that up to 35,000 children younger than 5 years of age die of malaria every year in Kenya.
So when a promising malaria vaccine was ready for drug trials, Kenya was one of 7 African countries that participated.
Take this plate, put that here, and then we do the streaking.
Over 15,000 children were vaccinated, and although the trial was predicted to be over 50% effective in malaria prevention, it fell far short. The vaccine turned out to be only 30% effective in infants, and it had even less protection for older children. It was a start, but it wasn't the solution. The fight continues. Mary Galinsky holds a black belt in Choi Kwan Do. She's also earned her stripes in the fight against malaria. As a young scientist, she became interested in the disease and created the Malaria Foundation International. Like any good warrior, she's prepared to engage the enemy on multiple fronts.
And I'm a professor in the School of Medicine, Division of Infectious Diseases at Emory University.
Mary has gathered an army of her peers in an all-out assault launched from laboratories across the state of Georgia. The result is a research consortium called MAPIC, which is headquartered at this United Methodist affiliated university.
MAPIC stands for the Malaria Host Pathogen Interaction Center. And this is a new research center that we're building at Emory University, but also with many other partners from Georgia. And those partners include the University of Georgia, the Georgia Institute for Technology, and the Centers for Disease Control.
The National Institutes of Health recently awarded a $19 million contract to MAPIC. It funds a team of investigators from many scientific disciplines.
The knowledge that's coming in from all these different disciplines is enormous. How does a disease evolve? How does the disease continue to spread and make someone ill?
MAPIC carefully scrutinizes the infection and its root cause, the malaria parasite.
The malaria parasite has 2 different hosts that it lives with. It lives within a mosquito host, and it lives within another host. In the case of humans, it's inside humans.
Jessica Kissinger is one of the MAPIC investigators, and she knows a lot about this little bugger.
Most of the species actually infect birds and reptiles. So there's over 120 species of malaria parasites and Plasmodium species, and 5 of them infect humans.
The Plasmodium parasite hangs out in the gut of the mosquito, which is simply a very efficient carrier of the malaria-causing organism. The most deadly species of the parasite is widespread in sub-Saharan Africa. It's the parasite that attacks us through the female Anopheles mosquito. Like a mother protecting her babies, she's out for blood.
As strange as this may sound, we're food. And we're a source of nutrition for the female mosquito to rear her eggs.
She bites, and the parasite enters our bloodstream. It goes straight to the liver and quickly spreads from there. It can also lay dormant until ready to strike, and it's a parasite that has morphed and changed over time.
What it is able to do with what it has just boggles the mind. The amount of devastation that something like this can cause is profound. And 50 years of research, really wonderful minds working on the problem, we are unable to defeat the creativity and the evolvability and the sheer ability of this organism to do what it does so very well.
We're going to have to come at this parasite not just to prevent it from going into the liver, but later it starts to go into our red blood cells, and then later it comes back and reinfects mosquitoes. We have to learn to stop it at many points in its track by a combination of vaccines and drugs and other tools.
Right. Any given metabolite run, how many, is it one per processor?
So right now what I'm doing is...
MAPIC is collecting and organizing gargantuan amounts of scientific data.
The scale at which we are attempting to tackle this it was not unimaginable, but it's close. Once we have this data properly stored and archived in a real database, then we can go in and we can ask all kinds of questions, and as it's released to the community, they can go in and ask any kind of question.
This is really cutting edge work, and it's pioneering work because it moves the entire field dramatically forward.
But if it's brominated, then it should have a very different mass.
Dean Jones is witnessing scientific breakthroughs in genomics that are propelling a deeper exploration of malaria. These allow an incredibly detailed view of malaria's chemical fingerprint under a wide variety of conditions.
The real breakthrough came this past year with new computer algorithms, and this allows us now to measure 50,000 chemicals in a drop of blood. We will be able to predict who would have a severe response versus who would have a mild response and the metabolic differences. The idea would be that we could then come in and nutritionally intervene, hopefully being able to reduce the severity simply by a nutritional modification.
We are hoping to come up with a signature that we say, okay, anytime you have a malaria infection, this is the signature that we see in the body.
Chris Ebegbu is an immunologist originally from Nigeria. The malaria parasite is one he knows on a personal level.
That really afflicts my people. The first question they asked me, oh, you guys going to get a vaccine for malaria? So that means that we're not going to have malaria anymore? I said, we're getting there, but we need your prayers also.
So many questions. How does geography or environment play a part? What pollutants are present? What about diet? What makes someone more or less susceptible to severe infection? Is the victim suffering from other health problems like anemia? What happens in the blood cells to attract mosquitoes to certain individuals more than others?
It's like we have a molecular camera where we take a snapshot, bing, 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 over time, and we can watch what's happening. That has not been done before in a complex system like this.
We're ultimately just taking engineering principles and applying them to a totally different system and then trying to get a better understanding of the system.
Mark Staszynski is pushing the envelope in bioengineering by building mathematical models for use in malaria research.
What if I were to remove this metabolite? What if I were to add a whole bunch of this extra gene? Then I could predict, well, that would kill the parasite, or that would be even worse for the patient. And so we can make these predictions in the computer so that then we can know which ones might be good and what might be bad, and then we'll know that those should be the ones that we prioritize in the lab.
It's not an empty equation and could add up to important answers. But how will this translate into saving lives?
We're going to be finding brand new targets, brand new ways and places we can intervene to have better, more sensitive, more reliable tests, cost-effective tests, and to distinguish the different species.
And this slide is positive about 3+ malaria.
We're in a completely different level from 20 years ago, from 10 years ago, from 5 years ago. And we can imagine no malaria. But can we imagine where will we be in 5 years? I don't think so. We just know we're going to be light years away of where we've been.
He's much improved. He came in very sick, but now after the treatment, he's doing good.
But once a vaccine is discovered, How do you convince people to use it? And how will it be distributed in hard-to-reach rural areas? Stay tuned to see how strengthening faith-based healthcare can open hearts, minds, and doors. Mozambique, on the southeastern edge of Africa. Kissed by the warm waves of the Indian Ocean. A prime trade route, it caught the eye of the Portuguese Empire in the 16th century, and the people here lived under its rule for nearly 500 years. Now, nearly 2 decades out of a civil war, economic mismanagement and devastating natural disasters have resulted in more than half of its population living on less than $1 a day. And malaria is the major health concern in this coastal country. In some areas, 90% of the children are infected with the disease. It accounts for almost half of the deaths in young children. But it's not just the little ones who suffer. Malaria curses the purse as well. The cost of seeking and getting treatment, the lost earnings, and the devastation wrought when a family wage earner dies of the disease all add up to an exhausting economic enemy, which costs the continent $14 billion a year in lost productivity. So the question is, can the same type of faith-based, community-run effort that was successfully launched in Sierra Leone be duplicated here? Certainly there are thousands of miles of borders between the two countries, but malaria and the church both easily cross these borders. United Methodist Bishop Joaquina Nanala knows it will be a lot of work.
I'm really looking at this as a movement. I'm anticipating a number of people that will come together regardless of who they are, fighting the same cause.
The first step is getting everyone on the same page. Going house to house with nets and information is a lot more work than just handing out nets. Representatives of United Methodist Health Boards from 16 African countries have gathered in Ghana to learn how to apply for and administer Imagine No Malaria grants.
Every minute, someone dies from malaria, and we need to do something.
What we noticed very quickly was that the technical skills in development of grant applications, understanding how to steer their own governance structure and management structures, they didn't know that.
One of the core principles of the Imagine No Malaria campaign is to put into place skills that will be useful long after the possible elimination of malaria.
If your actual number is very different than the number you budgeted.
So learning about budgets, accountability of donor funds, and follow-up reports will not only help in administering a community-based malaria prevention campaign, it will provide transferable skills that will benefit any community program. Malaria is just the springboard.
You may have a heart to do something, but if you don't have the capacity and the skilled people on the ground running with that vision, running with the passion, running with what you are wanting to achieve, it will not come to pass.
So it's not just about bed nets. Ultimately, it's not even just about malaria. It's about leaving in place a structure that will help communities pull themselves out of poverty and toward healthy, productive lives.
There is a proverb which says it's better to train someone instead of giving him a fish.
While education and empowerment are happening on this side of the ocean, this model of ministry is also transforming lives in the United States. Coming up, how the United States waged a war against malaria and won.
Malaria.
Although 90% of the world's malaria occurs in sub-Saharan Africa today,
She's not doing well.
It wasn't too awfully long ago that the United States wagered a gritty battle with the disease. At the dawn of the 20th century, visionaries set their sights on a Central American canal that would link the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The French began construction on the Panama Canal in earnest. But their machines were no match against malaria. More than 20,000 workers died from the fatal fever. This 1904 magazine illustration depicts the Grim Reaper hovering over the site. It was no exaggeration. With no known prevention, malaria forced France to abandon the project. As their machines were rusting in the jungle, British physician Ronald Ross was onto something. And in 1902, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for linking mosquitoes and malaria. 2 years later, the United States took over the canal construction. First step, appointing Colonel William Gorgas as Chief Sanitary Officer. Although the mosquito-malaria connection was still considered unproven, Gorgas was giving leeway to drain and fill wetlands and disperse insecticides. It can be said that millions of tons of dynamite, and nearly just as much bug spray, helped dig the 51-mile passage. But malaria was occurring at home, too. The government formed the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, in 1946 as a primary resource agency to fight malaria in the U.S. The disease was fought on the war front as well. In a wartime cartoon short, Private Safu, a creation of Theodore Dr. Seuss Geisel, demonstrated how not to avoid malaria.
He don't care where he goes. He's wide open. Repellent? He never touches the stuff.
The short was directed by Chuck Jones of Warner Brothers' Bugs Bunny fame and featured a vexing vixen.
You all know her name, Anopheles Annie, the malaria mosquito.
But the menacing message was delivered more seriously, too.
Breeding ground for a malignant enemy. This enemy, sighted in the microscope, the Anopheles mosquito, strikes silently behind the lines with a devastating weapon. Malaria.
In the tropical climates, malaria decimated Allied fighting forces.
A tragic toll of American lives has been taken in the struggle against this insect army in the tropics.
During and after the war, a common weapon against malaria was a potent pesticide called DDT.
Absorbed through the feet or other parts of the body, DDT affects the nervous system and motor coordination of the insect.
At first, it was thought the insects were its only casualties. DDT was believed to be safe.
Contact of the hands upon the dry powder is not dangerous, for in this form, DDT is not absorbed through the skin.
But scientists began recording adverse effects on the environment, and there were reported links between the chemical and various cancers. Its widespread use was banned in 1972. By that time, however, DDT had aided in the elimination of malaria in the United States and other parts of the world. Some countries still use it in limited quantities. But in sub-Saharan Africa, the year-round cycle of the mosquito and its resistance to this pesticide simply makes DDT ineffective. And although indoor residual spraying using other pesticides is an important tool, it's only part of the solution. The United States was essentially declared free of malaria in 1949. Even so, today many Americans continue to fight the disease on a global scale. Stay with us to see how they're doing it. At a United Methodist clinic in the Republic of Guinea, a lab technician prepares to test a patient for malaria.
I want to do the blood test, malaria test.
Okay. The disease is prevalent here, but the clinic has no electricity or running water. So the technician uses what he has to prepare the slide to go under the microscope. Matches, a candle, and a tub of water are his tools. It's a rudimentary process, but the people here do what it takes to save lives. They are combating ignorance of the disease, treatments that are becoming resistant, and a growing counterfeit market of ineffective or harmful drugs. One of the core principles of the Imagine No Malaria campaign is to put into place skills that will be useful long after the possible elimination of malaria. However, in Ogden, Kansas, residents are taking aim at malaria.
Our little church is doing something really exciting today. We're having a shootout because we have the unique position that we are next door neighbors to a gun range.
Money raised from the shootout will go towards Imagine No Malaria's efforts in Africa.
How can I make a difference? And, buying a $10 Target supplies this mosquito net, so it's a pretty cool thing.
And while these events help to raise money and awareness, the campaign has had a larger impact on this college freshman.
My name is Elizabeth Clymer. I'm 18 years old, and I'm a student here at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It's funny to think that one little bug could have such a big impact on life.
In each one we have stuffed a orange sheet with some basic facts about malaria, and then at the end it tells what our main goal with these things, what these cans are.
Well, I first learned about malaria for an 8th grade civics project, so I was 13 at the time, and our goal was to find a problem in the world to fix. Clearly we can't it's not simple to fix something, but you can certainly make a difference and work towards that goal of fixing something.
When a disease causes poverty and it kills children, it's time for more people to take action.
As a middle schooler, Elizabeth organized her youth group at Messiah United Methodist Church in Springfield, Virginia. They dubbed themselves the SWAT team and set out to collect spare change.
Before we knew it, we had $26,000 in spare change right before our eyes.
As the team continued their campaign, Elizabeth broadened the efforts by organizing swim-a-thons and speaking out about the disease whenever she had the opportunity.
Malaria is a disease of poverty. In short, diseases of poverty keep poor nations poor.
To date, her efforts have raised nearly $40,000. She's been recognized by the United Nations Foundation and the White House. She hasn't stopped. Elizabeth took the challenge to college with her, and it's shaping her choice of careers.
It's helped me to figure out what I want to do with my life, where I want to go, literally and figuratively.
Medical school is a possibility, but she says global health is a near certainty.
Mosquito changed my life for the best. I've learned so much, but on the other side of the earth, it's doing the very opposite. It's killing any chance at life. It's ruining motivation. And it's incredibly devastating.
The organizer in her is still buzzing about malaria, and she hopes to one day launch a multi-campus campaign.
My dream for being a Tar Heel is to create a Duke UNC fundraiser for malaria prevention. I'm a go-getter, so the more things we have in the fight against malaria, the happier I'll be, and knowing that we can make a big difference and have a big influence in the fight against malaria.
Even though malaria has been around since humankind, strategists continually adjust the battle plan. You'll be surprised at what the hand-to-hand combat really looks like. This single mother in Sierra Leone has no idea what's being done around the world to keep her and her children healthy. Nasu Bengali has 4 children, and she's doing today what she does every day, scraping together enough to eat one meal. Working among her neighbors, it's clear there isn't any extra here. And when there is a loss, it's felt by everyone. Until Nasu was visited by a community health worker and given information and a bed net.
After that, you target like this.
She didn't know much about malaria. When her children fell ill, she brewed up a home remedy.
When the children are feverish, I boil pineapple pills and have them drink the liquid.
Ancient remedies are commonly used at the onset of malaria. In the city, traditional healers still do a brisk business. And in the market, herbal remedies abound.
My name is Musu Kama.
This woman makes her living selling herbs.
This is bang bang.
The bark and roots of a local tree are traditionally used for everything from intestinal worms to toothaches to...
This is malaria. When malaria is inside your bodies, you soak it and drink it.
It is thought to purge the body of the disease. While it may have some medicinal value, physicians warn that some of these local cures can be dangerous. Imba Wuri is head nurse in the pediatric ward at the Sierra Leone Government Hospital in Bo.
It's always filled up. It's always filled up.
A 3-year-old girl died here just this morning. Other children are very sick from the bite of a mosquito.
She was unconscious when she came in. She came in with malaria, and the malaria complications were she was anemic, grossly anemic, and there was jaundice. She was highly jaundiced.
Anemia is treated with a blood transfusion, and the malaria with medication. But what if a child isn't close to a hospital? What if the hospital doesn't have any medication? Or a supply of healthy blood, or even needles? It happens every day. But by building a strong health infrastructure, other pressing issues can be addressed. A nimble health system will mean a better life for everyone. Although the nets offer promise, getting them to the people is a complicated process.
The reality is, in the communities where we do work, people live on less than $1.25 a day. A bed net becomes a precious commodity. The first instinct is to save it, to treasure it, consider it a sign and a symbol of wealth. We open bed nets as we distribute them to encourage people not to just treasure the net, but to use the net.
What we hear many times when we go into communities is that these BedNet recipients have never received anything newly packaged. Everything they have is something that was passed down. And so if you imagine what it's like to get something new and you own it for the first time, the sense of value or how you want to take care of it or take someone else's because it's so valued is very, very high.
When the nets arrive in port, a whole security process unfolds.
Once it gets to the district level, there's another challenge of storage and an even greater challenge of security. They're worth lots of money, and so you need to make sure it's protected.
Nets are delivered by boat, truck, train, cycle, or on foot. And local officials have to account for every one.
80% of our budget is simply purchasing the nets and then navigating kind of the infrastructure. There's no roads, or we had a train system breakdown in Congo last year. It's going to delay and increase the cost of just getting the nets to the villages.
And inviting faith-based groups to the table is a new experience for most governments. Plus, the church's motives are sometimes viewed suspiciously.
We were thinking that we would be the forefront in the planning and the implementation. Then, the effects, the ripples go down to the community people.
It was Beatrice Bonga's team that started the process in Sierra Leone.
They feel, or maybe they are seeing us as a threat, but we really must not be seen as threats. We are complementing what government is doing. We are complementing implementation of policies.
Building trust. Collaborating. These are the positive side effects of engaging local leaders. And nothing happens without their cooperation.
I am Chief George Murray. This is to prevent mosquitoes bite, the mosquito net. It is really doing very well for mosquitoes. It prevents them from sucking the blood of the children and inhabitants of this room.
When the welcome mat is planted at the threshold of local chiefdoms, information will be disseminated. Town criers with bullhorns, broadcast directives, meetings are held. Local radio programs are engaged. Volunteers are given access. And yes, nets are secured and accounted for.
When people participate in any program, they become empowered. And to show us that they were empowered, then some of them, the chiefdoms, the chiefdom leaders made laws. In the past, nets were used for all kinds of things. But this time, the leaders themselves made laws that whoever misused the nets were going to pay fines.
As Nasu bathes her children before bed, she will probably never know the effort that has gone into decreasing malaria and eliminating the disease. Whether by clergy educating their flocks, young people dedicating their lives to the fight, scientists laboring over microscopic solutions, or doctors treating patients every day. Their commitment means she worries a bit less. Her children are a little safer. Because a worldwide community has undertaken an extraordinary effort to deliver bed nets, education, and empowerment with as much care and promise as she gives her own children.
That must not be the end. That's just the beginning of a road. And I pray we all continue to do things to save more lives.
As this family turns in for the night, the mission continues, because there's still nearly a whole continent facing a killer in the dark. Malaria is a disease that's preventable, treatable, and beatable. But the progress that has been made is fragile, and the work has to continue. To see how you can join the extraordinary effort working to eliminate this disease, log on to ImagineNoMalaria.org.